Aloha, Gary.
Aloha to you right back. Aria Juliet Castillo. How are
Hi.
you today? You got a nice smile on you this morning or this afternoon?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm in a good mood. I had a restful weekend, inspiring couple days at Kulan Academy the weekend before, and I'm excited to catch up with you.
Yeah, great. You got an exciting group at the Kuleana Academy. I've been kind of seeing your posts on Facebook and a lot of good solid Maui group. We're going to talk about Maui later today and people from every island. And good. I miss you guys. I'm still around and I'm still involved a little bit, but I miss hanging out and seeing all the. It's just cool to be around cool people. Young people, old people, people that care about the planet and people and want to do something, and that's what gets me going. But
Well, your reputation precedes you because people still always associate Hoppa with Gary Hooser, Kulan Academy with Gary Hooser, and
well,
trying to live up to that legacy.
well, thank you. You were there from the beginning, and it wouldn't have happened without you and being there and working together. It's called synergy, right? Nobody's singly responsible. It takes a few people, and yeah, which is how this video podcast got started. We were talking about it, and you said, Gary, let's do it. So we're doing it. This is our fifth or sixth one, and we invite people to put questions in the chat. I guess that's how it works.
Yeah.
And if you're watching on Facebook or wherever you're watching, share it with friends, please.
Facebook and YouTube, we should be live on both. And you want to do a little disclaimer before we get started?
Sure, sure. Even though we both have deep connections to HAPA, Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action. You're currently working with them as the democracy, what is it?
Reclaiming Democracy Program Director.
Program Director, Reclaiming Democracy. And I'm a former president of the board, and we're both former founders. HAPA's not the sponsor. In fact, we don't have a sponsor. We're doing this as volunteers. Nobody's paying us. No organization has to take a hit for something we say. And in a way, it's good. We all could use the money, of course, for help us pay our bills, but not having a sponsor, not having to ask for money, uh, gives us a certain amount of freedom to talk about whatever we want. We don't have to worry about implicating an organization or a sponsor. So if people want to contact me or read my blog, I post on my blog fairly regularly. You can go to garyhooser.blog, and I posted something there this morning. We're going to talk about it later today in this show. Or you can go to garyhooser.com and find out more about me. And if you subscribe, on the main screen, just scroll down, you can subscribe to my email action letter. No, I don't call it a newsletter, it's an action letter. And you can find out more about me. I serve in the Hawaii State Senate. I serve in the Kauai County Council. I've worn a lot of hats. Right now, I'm tutu man. I'm a proud grandfather and doing what I can as a volunteer to help other people. How about yourself? Give yourself a little introduction there, Aria.
My name is Aria Juliet Castillo, born and raised in Kauai, currently live in Kailua. Um, I work for HAPA, Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action, as a Reclaiming Democracy Program Director. I've worked a number of years for HAPA. I also do campaign management and graphic design on the side for political candidates and nonprofits. Um, this is my passion and interest in life is political parties and politics and all of that fun stuff. I just find it so fascinating. I'm just happy to be here.
Cool. Well, I'm going to ask you a surprise question here. People, I talk about what keeps me awake at night. I talk about the man under the bridge. I talk about the terrible injustice of the world, of people injustice. I don't know if I've ever asked you that question, but why are you here? I know you enjoy policy and politics, but what keeps you awake at night? What's your passion? What subject matter? Whatever.
So I think everything can be summed down to the experience that I had surrounding Bill 2491. When I moved back to Hawaii after college, I was living in LA for a little while. I came home and I found that these chemical corporations were overtaking the ag lands on Kauai. And it was something that you couldn't ignore. I would drive out to Polahala and see this bright green corn growing on the side of the road. And it was like almost surreal, like sci-fi like. And then I would see it driving in Poipu, and then I would see it driving into Lihue. And it was really freaky. And, coincidentally, I had a lot of friends who were really concerned about GMOs and, pesticides and everything. And I didn't really know a lot about it, but my friend, my uncle, Gary Kuzer, introduced the bill to kind of get some questions answered about this industry. And I didn't know a lot about it, but I was happy to get more involved, happy to help out. He would ask me to kind of help create some educational materials around the pesticide issue and kind of just in general about the process, because a lot of people were getting introduced to this issue for the first time, getting involved in the county level. Like, what is the committee hearing? What is the process? Why does it have to go to the committee hearing, then it has to go to regular hearing? How many people have to vote on it? When do we have to testify? And kind of just helping start to organize that stuff. It was really interesting to me. And obviously, the compelling testimony around this issue was it just drew you in, and you knew that this was the right side to be on. But I'll never forget one day I was driving probably to or from a meeting, listening to KKCR on the radio, and I heard this story. This young woman was talking, and she was sharing a story about her life, about how she was a single mother of two, and she had recently moved from the east side of Hawaii to the west side, Kekaha, Hawaiian homeland. Opportunity to, raise a family and have her own home, something that she didn't really think was possible in her, single family income, with her two daughters in a community of like-minded people, just a nice environment, right? A safe environment, or so she thought. And a little while after they moved in, they noticed they were getting a little bit sick. They noticed this strange industrial agriculture just right outside of their house, literally borderline fence to their community. And it turns out that these agrochemical industries were leasing the land right up into her borderlines on Hawaiian homeland in Kekaha. And just sheer the fear in her voice that she thought she made the wrong decision in moving her family there, thinking that she could have a safe place for them to stay, thinking she was creating a better opportunity for them, but knowing that she could be exposing them to these toxic pesticides. And this is happening in Hawaiian homelands like Kekaha and in Waimea, where there's a lot of local families, a lot of long-term, Hawaiian families, local families, and just noticing that kind of stuff doesn't happen in Poipu next to the second homes, the resorts, doesn't happen on the North Shore with all these, even though there's a lot of ag, it's a lot of, agriculture where it's really just gentleman estates on these luscious gardens and stuff, but not really any industrial ag. This is happening always on the west sides of the islands where there's poor communities. Same thing with the landfills that we're talking about on Oahu. Where are they subjugated? Where are we talking about putting them? In Waialua, in the west side, in Nanakuli. It's that kind of injustice I just can't stand it. Same thing that's happening with Bill 9. They want to build all these houses and, create all of these opportunities for second homes, luxury development, but they're not taking a stand when it comes to housing our communities, our local families. And that kind of stuff just really, really upsets me.
Yeah, well, gee, I mean, the injustice of it, and we're going to talk about that with the military expansion and the injustice, the environmental degradation, the half truths or lies told by industry. The same with the Maui situation too. The way they seek to divide the community, and on the other side of it, the inspiration. And you were there with me, and the Bill 2491, and how the people came out on the streets and said, "No, we're not going to take this." And we're seeing the same thing on Maui, and my heart goes out to them, and I'm just so inspired by our Ohana whether we know them or not, on Maui, standing up and showing up at those meetings and the environmental impact statement meetings for the military, the same thing. I was watching those on live, and I almost started crying. These young people, and they're doing their homework too. It's not just a bunch of shouting and pounding on the desk. I've seen these people, young people and old people, but they're reading up, they're doing their homework, and they're saying, no, that's not right. So yeah, that's why we're both here.
Let's get into the DLNR decision.
Okay.
Talk about the second rejection that we've had of the EIS. This time it was area on Oahu, Makua, Kahuku, and why is this kind of significant?
For me, it's kind of mind-blowing in a way. It's the first time I've ever seen the BLNR, the Board of Land and Natural Resources, reject outright final environmental impact statement from somebody as big as the military. I mean, nobody tells the military no, it seems like, but they did. And, I want to compliment and hats off to the staff as well as the people that showed up. The staff, the Department of Land and Natural Resource staff, the board staff, they gave a good hard look to that environmental impact statement and said, no, it's insufficient. And the Army, for whatever reason, arrogance, or they took it for granted, or they just messed up. I don't know. They did a very poor job. And one of the many hats I've worn is the director of the OEQC, Office of Environmental Quality Control, and we dealt with the Hawaii EIS law. So I looked at it myself, and it was outrageous. So it was a bad document, but still, the board could have still said, well, even though the document's not really what we wanted it to be, we're still going to let you have it. They could have said that, but because the room was full of people, the email was packed, outside in the hallway was packed, and the testimony after testimony after testimony came in. They could not pass it. It was just impossible.
Gary, do you know if between the first EIS that they rejected and the second one, was there any time for the Army to resubmit something or adjust the second one based on the feedback? Because I know a lot of the feedback is obviously very similar because there haven't been good stewards no matter what.
I'm not a lawyer, and so I don't really know the timeline, but I suspect they could have, yes. I mean, knowing that this other one was rejected, I think it's reasonable to say to the board, well, we're going to ask for you for a couple more weeks so we can look at this closer and make sure that it's right. We don't want to have it rejected because we forgot to do something. So I would think they could have asked for an extension. There's a lot of speculation, and I'll contribute to it here. No one knows their end game. No one knows what they really want. The Army, at the start of this hearing, said, well, we don't really want the whole thing. We're willing to take a little bit. And maybe that's why they're expecting it to be approved, because they had agreed to give up a lot of stuff. There are different groups. Andrea Brower, who was also a friend and colleague of ours from the 2491 days, one time during 2491, I said, Aria, who's in charge, right? I mean, we need a committee for this, a committee for that. And she said, no, Gary, nobody's in charge. This is the way we do it. It's organic. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the movement I'll use the word demilitarize. I don't really like that word because I believe in a strong defense. I think it's inevitable that some military will stay here, but in the battle that's ongoing now with these EISs, there doesn't seem to be any central force organization like HAPA or any other organization. There's a hugely strong Kanaka component. Native Hawaiians are coming out strong, and as it should be. And they're the central force, and I'll give them all the credit, actually. But they're not working under some single leader or some single organization, I believe. There's some key organizations helping, but there's also people like me and you. There's legislators. There's howlers from the mainland, settlers coming in and testifying. So at the end of the day, there's a broad coalition. And Some in the coalition, I'll speak for myself. I want to say no, period, to these leases. Clean up the land, restore it, and give it back to Native Hawaiians, period. It's not about taking half of it, not about trading. That's my Gary Hoosier's personal opinion. There are some organizations that say, well, maybe if they'll pay a certain amount of money, we can use the money, and therefore they're going to take it anyway, so we might as well get some money. So there's different opinions and different strategies. I'm not central to those discussions, but it's a very inspirational moment, and I hope that the community rides the momentum, and I hope that the legislators. I'll speak to our federal legislators, number one, because they're the ones dealing with the Army and the Navy. I hope they realize how intense and how broad-based and how strong the community opposition is, and don't take it for granted and just try to cut a deal with them.
So what's the next step?
Next step, I believe there's going to be some negotiations. I believe the Army is going to come back and either try to buy some land from the state or try to otherwise negotiate. I believe if they try to buy it, it takes 2/3 majority from the legislature approval, which I believe will be kind of difficult. It'll, again, a political hot potato. If they try to condemn it, if they try to go to court and legally and physically take the land, I think all hell is going to break loose, because it just reinforces the stereotype of the military occupation of the Hawaiian Nation. Yeah. I can't imagine that.
The military has been getting a lot of losses this week, I guess, because they also got proven to be liable for the Red Hill fuel leaks. And the court has ordered the plaintiffs to get some award money. Not enough. But
there's a $1.1 billion lawsuit against them. Mm-hmm. And they continue to mislead. That's part of the testimony was reoccurring theme is that the U.S. military has not been forthright. And that's a polite way of saying they've lied to the people and not done what they said they were going to do over time. And there's also PMRF on Kauai. It's a separate issue, but they also have an EIS approval coming up. They're also expanding, in my opinion, they're expanding some of their uses, including the bombing of an island that may or may not happen. Even they said it's an inert bombing, but still they're dropping big things on an island with endangered species on it.
In the name of training.
In the name of training. And the background too, Aria, is the craziness we got going on in Washington, D.C. Hegseth. You know, I mean, this guy is nuts. I'll tell you, I don't mind using that word. He's out of control. There's too much testosterone. He's got this, I'm a big bad guy, and I think our army should be a big bad. We're the people seeking out peace, right, and reconciliation. We got babies dying in Palestine. We got all this stuff going on, and the U.S. is party to that. Yeah. And I think more and more people are aware of it. They don't want to be part of it. So the ones coming up on Kauai, there's 3 hearings. If I can just real quickly flip to that, I'll give you some dates. Wednesday, July 16th in Kekaha, starts at 5:00. You can go online to find this stuff too. Wednesday, July 16th in Kekaha Neighborhood Center. Thursday, July 17th at the Sheraton Kauai Coconut Beach. July 17th at Kauai Coconut Beach, again, starts at 5:00. And then on the 15th, it's at Kauai Veteran Center. Those are the 3 meetings on Kauai. You can go, they're like, you go there and you listen to them. You can ask questions. You can offer comments and written comments if you want, learn more about it. But those are the 3 coming up for Kauai.
And these are put on by BLNR?
No, these are put on by the military.
The military. Okay, so they're trying to present their EIS, give the public opportunity to ask questions, and hopefully mitigate some of the negative testimony they might be anticipating.
Right. I mean, it's like you talked about 2491, and thank you so much for bringing that up. But it's like any industry trying to get something from the public. So they go to the public and they try to convince them that they're good guys. You know, that the food industry, Bill 2491, they said, we're feeding the world. We need this technology to feed the world. And that was a lie. The defense industry will say we need it for national security. And I believe that's mostly not true either. They always say that, and they said that about Koho Olave. They say it about everywhere. And we're the largest military force on the planet. We have more bases, more people. We sell more military arms than anybody else. So cutting back a little bit here and there is not going to jam up the U.S. defense, in my opinion. That's Gary Hooser. But they're there on these days to explain to the public what they're going to do and answer questions. And I encourage the public to listen and to ask probing questions. Ask them in writing as part of the official testimony. You're compelled by law to respond. And I'm not foolish enough to think that we're going to, State of Hawaii is going to deny PMRF and close them down. That's not going to happen. They may tighten up the rules. They may keep them from expanding as much as they want to expand. They might, there's a lot of good stuff that could happen out of it, but I doubt if they're going to tell them they can't stay here. That's just me. And my father, I grew up in the military. My dad was a career Navy guy. I have family members that are in the military. I support our veterans. I'm not a pacifist. I tell people, you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. But enough already, enough, in my opinion. The Sparky Matsunaga Institute for Peace is being defunded, by the Trump administration. We should have an equal emphasis on peacemaking. Invite world leaders here to sit with Native Hawaiian Kumu and talk about peace, talk about getting along.
I agree.
That's what we should be doing. Yeah, anyway, I go on too much. Thank you. You got me riled up.
Let's pivot a second. We had a major win for working families and the larger progressive movement in New York City. We saw Zohran Mamdani win the mayoral Democratic primary by ranked choice voting, which I thought was pretty cool. I think this is the second year that they've used ranked choice voting in the Democratic primary. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that win, what it means for the larger progressive movement, for the Democratic Party, and then maybe a little bit about ranked choice voting and how it can relate to here in Hawaii.
Sounds good. I think you understand it more than I do. I think at one of the Hawaii primary elections, we used it, I believe.
So in 2020, the Hawaii Democratic Party did use ranked choice voting in our Democratic primary. It's not mandated by law. It's mandated by the Democratic Party rules. We do ranked choice voting for our primary. In 2020, we had Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden running. So, it's not the best choice when there's just two people. It's better if there's more, but.
So how does it work? I mean, they say there's 5 people and the best guy is never going to win, or the best woman is never going to win.
Right. So you rank your first choice, and then you rank the less offensive choice, and then the less offensive choice, all the way down until it's like, okay, well, I guess if none of these other people win, this would be my 5th choice. But it gives you an opportunity to vote your conscience, knowing, this might not make it to the end, but I want to be effective, and then give your vote to the second. So essentially, after all the votes are cast, the least amount of vote getter on the bottom drops off, and their votes, the second votes on that ballot, get reallocated to whoever they voted for, and so on and so forth until someone comes out with a majority.
So that deals with the issue of voting for the lesser of evils, as people say. Mm-hmm. You've got two mainstream candidates, both of them, one's worse than the other. You don't like either one of them, and there's a really good candidate, but he doubt if we're going to win. So you struggle with that choice, yeah? So most people would say, I'm not going to vote for the one I really want because he's not going to win, mm-hmm. but I'll vote for my second best choice to keep the bad guy out.
Exactly, yeah. And it allows candidates to actually run with each other as opposed to against each other. Zoran Mandani and Brad Lander endorsed each other in the primary to make sure that Andrew Cuomo, who was obviously the worst choice, would not get in. And it allowed advocates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to endorse in a ranked choice way. So she got to list her 5 preferences on the ballot and say, these are the 5 people that I want to support, and this is the order that I'm going to vote for them, and I recommend you do that as well. So it kind of, allows you to just have more choices. It probably would be encouraging more people to run if you.
How do we do that in Hawaii? How do we get that up here?
So
is it a ballot? You guys got to amend the Constitution or something?
I'm not sure if we have to amend the Constitution. We did pass ranked choice voting in 2022 for federal races when we have to vote for a replacement in a federal race on off years. So that would be voting for a Senate seat if they had vacated the seat within their term before they're up for re-election, or for a council seat that's vacant before they're up for re-election. We haven't had either of those opportunities arise in the state yet, but if that happens, we're supposed to be using ranked choice voting.
Do we have any legislative champions on that in the state legislature that we can do it? Not yet, huh? I think it's up to us to champion that then. I say us collectively, people watching. And we have different people watch. We have some people who know they're insiders, they work at the legislature, they've been doing this for a while. And we have other people that are brand new. And so rule number 1 for the brand new people, and even the experienced people sometimes don't know this, know who your legislator is, who your state senator is, and your state rep, and your council, and reach out to them. So this is a good opportunity to call your state rep or send them an email and say, I'd like to know how you feel about ranked choice voting. Can we do that here in Hawaii? Just ask them. Just put it on their radar screen. Because we don't. This conversation can go a long way into third, fourth parties running as an independent, and I mean, let's face it, the lock is in right now for the 2 major parties. If you're a Democrat, you have a much better chance. Republicans have the second chance. Green Party and other parties have very little chance because they're just have a harder time. And independents too have a hard time just being on the ballot.
So Zoran's ran in the Democratic primary, but he's also a part of the movement called the Working Families Party, which is like an offset of the Democratic Party unofficially. So these are Democrats that are kind of like fed up with, the Democratic establishment that's overruling and kind of.
I can relate to that.
Progressive voices. So the Working Families Party, when you see someone endorsed by them, you kind of know that they're this specific type of Democrat, even though they still fit under the Democratic umbrella, which is very broad and technically pretty progressive if you look at our platform. But you know that they're a little bit different. So I think that
and that's the working class. What's it called?
Working Families Party.
Okay. Good. So a regular Democrat could carry that label. Well, they should join that other party too, but they don't have to quit being a Democrat to be part of the Working Families Party.
I think a lot about the last really competitive primary race that we had here when Ed Case first ran again. I think it was in 2018. If you recall, we had Douglas Chin, Senator Donna Mercado Kim. Who else was up there?
I can't remember.
Kaniela Ng.
Oh yeah.
Esther Kiaina, maybe.
There was a woman. Anyway, it was a crowded.
There was 6 people running, and then Ed Case, the very last minute, thought, there's no older white guy in the race. I might as well put my name in. And with the name recognition and the money so late in the game, he just took over. But I can't imagine, like, if we had ranked choice voting back then,
Right,
I feel like we could have gotten someone else.
Yeah.
And I worry, looking forward to 2026. Hopefully, there's going to be someone running against Ed Case. But unfortunately, if there's more than one, if there's 2 or 3 good choices,
Right.
they might eat at each other instead of support each other.
That's a standard truth for any contested primary when you're running against an incumbent, pretty much. If there's more than one challenger, the incumbent wins because they split the opposition vote. And for the record, I'm younger than Ed Case, Congressman Case. Not by a lot, but by a little bit, a couple of years. And he's a nice man. I've met him. I think we probably had lunch or something together, and I talked to him and his wife. He's a nice guy. He's just a corporatist. He in Arizona, he'd be running as a Republican, I'm sure. And we just don't have space for that. We need more than that. I'm sure he considers himself a centrist, which is supposed to be a good thing. But we do need a strong challenger who really believes and really willing to fight for us and for our values. And he's just not doing it. I want to applaud Congresswoman Tokuda, who's really come out wearing her values on her sleeve, literally. And I think doing a great job.
She's representing us really well.
Yeah, I think so. Senator Schatz and Senator Hirono also have stepped up, and I feel good about. I wish they would stand on the stage with Bernie Sanders and lock arms, but they haven't done that yet. But perhaps in the future they will.
So Rep. Tokuda and Representative Case are up for re-election next year. I don't know if Senator Schatz is. I think.
No, he's not.
Okay. So those are the 2 federal races that we can look forward to. What are the state races that we are going to be looking forward to?
The state races, well, every single House member, of course. So there's 51 members of the House. And if someone's interested in getting involved in politics, a House race at the state level is a good entry point. I'll say good because the district is small. There are House members who have gotten elected serving today in the state House, and they got less than 1,000 votes, 800 votes, that kind of thing, up to a couple thousand. Where if you go a state Senate race, it goes 6 to 8, 10,000 votes, and so it's a much larger territory. It costs more money, but every state House seat is up, and I jotted down the Senate seats. Half the state senators are up. So Senator Buenaventura is up for election. Senator Hashimoto, Senator Kochi, who represents us here in Kauai, and a position that I held for 8 years. I'm proud and honored to do so. Senator Stanley Chang is up for election. Senator Leslie Ihara, who I served with. Senator Fukunaga, who I also served with. They were both in my faction, the chess club, when I was there, along with Senator David Ige at the time. Senator Donna Kim is up for election, and she already has a challenger announced. And the challenger is Christine McPherson. Is that? You're frozen, are you, Juliet? So I'm talking about myself while you unfreeze. Senator Glenn Wakai is up for election. Senator Dela Cruz. Senator Dela Cruz, in my opinion, is the most powerful state legislator, state elected official in all of Hawaii. He is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. He has $1.2 million in his campaign account. Governor Green, who's also running, only has $1.3 million. So Senator Dela Cruz, who only has to run in one Senate district, has as much money just about as Governor Green, who has to run the entire state. Senator Kurt Favela is up for election. Senator Mike Gabbard, the father of the famous Tulsi Gabbard, former Congresswoman, now working with the Trump administration, is up. And Senator Chris Lee from the District 25 is up for election. So those are the senators that are for election. Interesting, some of the ones who are not running up for election, one of the most prominent names is Senator Brenton Ava, who's Republican, who's making noise about running against Congresswoman Jill Takuda for the House. And because he's not up, he's in the middle of a 4-year term, Senator Ava, which means he can run for a state seat and not resign. So he has what they call a free ride. I ran for Congress in the past in the same situation, middle of a 4-year state Senate term. I could run for a federal office without resigning. I thought I could win, why not? And so I ran and I lost. And so he is strongly rumored to be running for Congress. And of course, the governor's up for election, lieutenant governor's up for election, and every rep. The only federal seats would be Congressman Case and Takuda. There are Senator Hirono, U.S. Senator Hirono is not up to 2030, and Schatz is up in 2028. A lot of council races also up. I really encourage people to get familiar with the website. If you're into this stuff, and you wouldn't be watching if you weren't, you can find all kinds of information. The starting point is capital.hawaii.gov. That's where you start. You can search bills, you can read testimony. Then you can go to the Campaign Spending Commission, and and you can search every single one of these people and find out how much money they have in the bank. And you can find out who gives them the money, who their donors are, and what they spend the money on. Then you can go to the Office of Elections and find out how many votes they got, how many votes it takes to win. Hey, she's back.
Hi.
She's back and she's bad.
So sorry, Spectrum outage.
I found myself talking to a frozen person. It took me a few minutes to realize that you were frozen. But I went through the list and I talked a little bit about Senator Ava and the fact that he has a free ride and was strongly rumored to be running against Congresswoman Takuda. I did not mention the other senator who also has a free ride, who might be running for Congressman Case's seat. Yeah. That's also a rumor.
That's a great place to start speculation. See which senators and council members, for example, that don't have an election next year, that might toss their name into the hat and see what sticks. See if they have a mandate from their community. I find it really hard to believe that someone can effectively run a campaign, federal campaign, especially on the council level.
If they're a sitting council member,
without resigning, but
yeah. Who's going to run for mayor and lieutenant governor, or governor and lieutenant governor? Do you know? I haven't heard any names at all.
No rumors yet.
No, I've heard Council Chair Tommy Waters has got plans for something down the road, but I don't believe it's for governor and lieutenant governor. I think they would be hard to beat. What I mentioned while you were gone, Senator Dela Cruz, arguably the most influential legislator in the building, as the chair of Ways and Means, has $1.2 million in his campaign account. Governor Green has 1.3 million. So what's up with that, right?
What's up with them? Governor Green has been fundraising lately.
Yeah.
And I got a question like, what? Why? Because he can, I guess.
Yeah. The deadline for the next reporting is the end of this month. So at the end of July, we'll have, I think, maybe 6 months worth of more data. And you can tell a lot by looking at the fundraising reports to see who's active and who's not, who's vulnerable and who's not. I'm not watching the questions so much, and I hope other people are. If there are questions, or Mishka, or if somebody can prompt us, with that. But we got a pretty full agenda. So I went over all the different pieces. Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of the governor, he put out talked about the intent to veto list.
Yes.
And the Senate and the House said that there's no reason to convene special session based on the list. So they don't plan to override any of the vetoes that they're having. But there was no word about a special session for other reasons they might be wanting to come back in.
You know, I wish they would come back and do, and I wrote about this, it hasn't come out yet, but we need our own big, beautiful bill. We need one for Hawaii. You know, the Minnesota in 2023 did like 7 or 8 different groundbreaking initiatives, progressive initiatives. They had free lunches in school for everybody, not just for low-income people, but for all the kids. They had free in-state tuition for the colleges. They had paid family leave for everybody. They had legalized cannabis. The list goes on and on and on. They did it in 1 year. And that's what we need, our Democrats who dominate our state legislature, to put together our big, beautiful bill and counter and go beyond, play offense. Don't just counter, don't just play defense, but certainly counter the Trump administration's budget cuts and counter the despicable things they're doing with ICE as best we can using state law. We can direct state resources not to be used to support that. Other states and counties and cities have done that. I'm getting off track here. Sorry. Get me riled up.
So in your latest newsletter, you mentioned SB 933, something that was not on my radar. This was kind of the first I was hearing of it when you brought it up. So why don't you give us like a brief breakdown of what it was or what it is and how did it come to be?
Okay. And people can go to garyhooser.blog. And I posted, you got to scroll down the blog because it's the second post in line. And I posted about what I'm about to talk about. And it just came, you know, I have sometimes little birds whisper in my ear, or people will send me a note, or Gary, did you know about this? Gary, did you know? And I didn't know about it either. And I don't believe it's actually on a veto list. I think it's sitting on the governor's desk and will probably pass into law unsigned, pretty soon. The Senate Bill 933, in short, it is intended to respond to the Trump administration and DOJ cutbacks of private nonprofits. So we all are familiar with someone who runs a nonprofit who's got federal grants in the past and their budgets have been cut. I know of several environmental type of organizations like that out of nowhere, their budgets are cut and they're scrambling to fix it. So Bill SB 933, the good side of it, it was intended to help support those businesses, those nonprofits. It set aside $50 million to help them. The bad side of it, 2 bad sides. One is the bill says the people responsible for choosing who gets $50 million are 4 legislators, 2 senators and 2 House members. So the Senate president will pick 2 senators, his friends and supporters, naturally. And that's just the way it works, right? You pick your friends and supporters. And the Speaker of the House will pick her friends and supporters, 2 of them. And the 4 of them will decide who gets $50 million. And I don't believe they're qualified to do that. I believe there shouldn't be politicians deciding on who gets what money. There should be an administrative process. There should be an application. There should be scoring. There should be a non-political administrator familiar with grants and this kind of work who decides how that money is spent, not politicians. That's number one. But the way it's set up is the 4 politicians are the ones that do it. And I lay out the actual words of the bill itself. It's not just me talking. That's what it says. And then if that wasn't enough to push me over the top, the bill also says, and by the way, we're exempting all this from Chapter 92, the Sunshine Law. And so not only do 4 politicians decide who gets 50 million, but they can do it in secret. They can meet behind closed doors. They can meet and talk to these, and to me, it's just despicable. And so that's the policy, I believe, is outrageously bad. Good intent, but outrageously bad in terms of implementation. But the process is also equally or worse. This started out as what they call a short form bill. Short forms are empty bills. They're just titles. This says relating to the budget, and there's nothing else there. Then one committee, a Senate committee, had a hearing and inserted language in there about the budget. And then the House had a hearing and inserted language about the budget. And then they sent it to conference committee because there's no agreement on that too. And the conference committee, which is made up of the House and the Senate, put an entirely new bill in there, new language. I want to say 100% new, but there may be some. But they inserted the provision about the 4 politicians giving the money out, and they inserted the deletion of Sunshine Law that wasn't in that before.
And in conference committee, there's no opportunity for the public to review these changes or to submit testimony.
Exactly. There's no opportunity. The public knows nothing. And it gets worse, Aria. Okay? It gets worse. There was never any discussion, even at the committee. So when the chair announces we have a bill, I watched the video over and over again. I watched the video. They say, okay, we have agreement. But they never mentioned the components of the 4 politicians making the decision. They never mention the Sunshine Law. They just give a general statement about a bill that's going to help these policymakers. Okay? And then it gets worse. It's even worse. So the committee reports. The people that are familiar with the legislative process know that after every hearing, after every vote, decision, there's a committee report that's filed. The committee report outlines what the committee did. It talks in general terms about who testified in for it, who testified against it, what amendments were made. The committee report does not say a word about the 4 politicians making the decision or the Sunshine Law. Not one single word. So the entire process is done in secret, and the policy itself allows for secret to dole out the money. I mean, yes, that there will at the end of the day be Aloha United Way is facilitating managing the money and make sure there's reports back. So it's not just giving it to people that are going to go spend it on a vacation. They're giving it to legitimate nonprofits, in theory, and Aloha United Way would manage the reports when they report how they spent the money. But okay, let's say I'm on that committee. I'm a senator. I'm on the committee. I get to pick who's gets the money or not. Who am I going to pick? You're going to pick people in your district. You're going to pick organizations that are maybe fully legitimate organizations, right? But you're going to be biased toward your district. And there's just so much wrong with it. I doubt if it could be vetoed at this point. I'm not really clear on the legal aspects, but and I would be remiss if I didn't say the Hawaii State Constitution says every committee decision has to be done in public. Decision making on matters before a committee has to be done in public, is what the state constitution says. I watched these hearings. There was no decisions made in public at all. And these decisions don't come out of thin air. They announced, yes, but they didn't make the decision in public, in my opinion. So that, get me riled up there. Again, get it, questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. So this process, conference committee process, I find it equally frustrating too. Is it something that the public could maybe change? Is it in the rules that we could change to say that the conference committee, that anything that is amended in conference or voted on in conference has to be, made aware of the public in 24 hours, or what can we do?
The good question. What can we do? Unfortunately, the rules don't matter. And I hate to be super cynical during this whole today's broadcast, but I'm following the Ocasio versus the House matter, and they're suing the House, or Ocasio is a lead plaintiff, suing the House to make them follow this Constitution. And during that testimony, they said that those are our rules. We can follow them if I want to, and you can't make us follow them. The court can't make us follow our own rules. So that's number one. The rules already say that the conference committee shall only use what was in the prior bills. They can't interject totally new out left field stuff. So if the bill says we want it to be, I'll use a weird example, a 50 mile an hour speed limit, and the other side says no, a 35 mile an hour speed limit, they can compromise in the middle on the speed limit, make a decision, but they can't come out with a totally new bill that says all you can do is use roller skates on the highway or something crazy. I mean, you're supposed to, the conference committee is supposed to use what was already debated and decided, and to bring the two sides together.
But it's
so what can we do? What can we do?
It's technically not a gut and replace, though, right? Because the subject matter essentially is the same as the initial bill.
I'm not a lawyer, but I think it is. I think legally it's a gut and replace, because the matter that was passed into law, the bill that was passed into law, the 99% of it, from what I can tell, 90% certainly, was not ever heard before. So to become law, a bill is supposed to be heard, I think, 3 times. But each house is supposed to have a couple hearings on it. So if you have a couple hearings on Bill X and it's changed to Bill Y, that's a gut and replace. So a court would have to determine. Also, this spending money is not a legislative constitutional responsibility. It's an executive responsibility. The executive spends money. The legislators don't spend money. And so I think they're overstepping their bounds. You could pass a law, this is how we want the money spent, but to interject yourself as a decision maker after the legislation session is closed opens up all kinds of stuff. They're going to sit on other committees, other places too, and decide how the money's spent. The arrogance of it all is what bothers me, really.
Do you want to name any names? Do we know?
Yeah, I'll name.
Who was on the conference committee that was in charge?
Every single Democrat in the House and the Senate voted in support. Every single one. In the House, Representative Iwamoto, Peruso, and Bellotti voted with reservations.
Okay.
And the Democrats. Republicans in general voted no. I don't know if every single one voted no. And I don't know the reasons behind it. With reservations is a yes vote, but at least they express the reservations. Present at the conference committee were not the chairs of Ways and Means. I don't believe. I think it was, might have been the House chair. I don't remember seeing Donovan Dela Cruz, Senator Dela Cruz there. And it goes by really quick, and nobody says anything. They gavel in, they announce who's in the room. There's 3 people at the table. They say we either have a deal, we don't have a deal, and then when they have the deal, they announce, okay, we've got a bill, we've come together on this, and so let's pass it. And they say very little about it. And it's supposed to be, by Constitution, a decision made in public. For them to come to that decision, the 2 chairs had to talk. The 2 chairs had to meet, either in person or on phone or email. They had to have a conversation. And the Constitution says if 2 committees meet, or members of two committees meet for the purpose of making a decision, it has to be in public. And that didn't happen. So I don't know if there's any solution except to express I think what we need to do is let the policymakers know that we know and that we don't like it. They're not happy. They don't like people not being happy with them. But if we don't say anything, they're going to think it's okay. I did talk to one legislator who said, well, Gary, this is the way it's done anyway on grant and aids. And the legislature doesn't have to abide by the Sunshine Law. And I said, that is true. But grant and aids are part of the budget making process. That's a document that's a public document. This is post legislative session. This is not part of the legislative session. This is post, when those four will be involved in this decision making. And the same with the Sunshine. The Constitution does say the decisions have to be in public. But leadership and those who want to make this happen, and the most powerful person in the room is Senator Dela Cruz, chairman of Ways and Means. And at this time, there was also the chair of finance was in place, Representative Kyle Yamashita. They both wanted this to happen. And in general, I'm assuming that, and that's the reality of how things work.
Right.
It's probably a reality to say that just Dela Cruz wants it to work, it's going to work. And the Senate President, Ron Kochi, and the Speaker of the House, Nadine Nakamura, Representative Nakamura, are probably not going to argue on it. If the many committees want to have it, they have it. And they just tell the members, don't worry about it. We got to do this, and they want to do it. And let's see what happens. And there could have been 30 bills on the agenda when they voted on the floor. Who knows? I've been there. It's 8 years I served in the Senate. And the volume, I don't want to make excuses for senators, representatives, but I will. The volume that comes across your desk is incredible. And to read every single bill, if you don't sit on the committee, is hard. A conference committee is last minute. And so unless you get a heads up, like on this, someone told me, I didn't know about it. I think I'm a pretty my guy. But somebody gave me a heads up. So unless, as a legislator, your staff or another friend who's a legislator calls and says, hey, Senator, did you see this bill? You may not even know about it until you get to the floor. And then on the floor, you don't want to have to fight, and you're not prepared to fight. And you're not going to win anyway because you don't have the votes. So you just keep your head down. It's a sad, sad situation. We need to elect people who are willing to fight for us, real Democrats who aren't just worried about going along to get along. I know it's easy for me to say, armchair quarterback here.
Can we talk a little bit about voting yes with reservations? I find myself incredibly frustrated with, our allies, our champions in the House and Senate, that they should just vote no. They know that it's going to pass anyway. So why are they voting with reservations as opposed to just casting the no vote?
It's a great question. I think they should ban that, but that has to be done by rule, and they don't follow the rules. But they could. I mean, I'm cynical about not following the rules, but they could. The leadership could say we have to follow these rules. We want to follow them. A majority, that's 13 people, 13 senators, and 26 House members. If they want to do and make the rules mean something, they can, but it takes a majority. So I would ban voting with reservations. In theory, it serves a purpose. During an early vote, let's say it's the first committee, and I like it. I want to support this, but it's just not really ready for prime time yet. And so I don't want to kill it, but I don't want to really, I want to telegraph my concern. So anybody looking at the record tomorrow can see Gary voted with reservations. Must be something wrong with this bill. So it's used as a tool to telegraph. Certainly on the final votes, it shouldn't be used. It could ban it completely, or at least on the final votes. It's because many legislators will use it as an excuse. Well, don't blame me. I voted with reservations. Well, it's still a yes,
Yeah.
especially on the final vote. And I would rather, and I've done, and I have to say, more than an armchair quarterback. When I was in the Senate, I voted no on many occasions, even though I wasn't going to win. But I felt compelled to. I felt people expected me to vote that way. Quick story. First time I was going to vote no in the Senate, one of my colleagues at the time said, "Gary, did you get permission?" I said, "What do you mean permission?" He said, "Released. Did you get released?" I said, "What do you mean, did I get released? I don't like the bill. I'm going to vote no on the bill." He said, No. You got to get released from leadership. Permission to vote no." I said, "That's crazy. That's nuts." And I did give leadership a heads up. I said, I'm going to vote no. But I didn't ask him for permission to vote no, permission to vote your conscience. But that's the mentality there. Because if an issue doesn't have the votes, if it's not going to pass, it won't be voted on.
Right.
That's another custom. If it goes into a committee and it's not going to have the votes to pass out, they'll re-refer it or they'll kill it without voting. Same on the floor. If it gets to the floor and they find out they don't have the votes to pass it, they'll kill it. Rarely will you ever get a vote that isn't a vote to pass. They have words they use about protecting your members. So they want to protect you from your political fallout. And I believe members need to be able to go into their district and knock on the door and explain to them their vote.
Yeah.
And tell the person, you may not have agreed with me on this vote, but this is why I voted, and you can count on me for all these other things. Whatever. Instead of hiding from your vote, you should be proud and be willing to stand up and explain why you voted.
That's a lot of political theater. I want to pivot to some more political theater that we're watching right over on Maui with their STR ban, or STR phase out, I should say. That's the right words. We're not banning STRs. We're just trying to...
Short-term vacation rentals.
Yeah, short-term vacation rentals. So Bill 9 is phasing out the list of STRs that are in the apartment zone district of Maui. This is like borderline to the resort areas. So there's resort areas in Maui where all the hotels are. And then there's apartment zones, which are kind of like on the border of where all these resorts are. And there's a lot of apartment condos, etc. And there have been overtaken by short-term vacation rentals. And they're just, as we are in a housing crisis, as our governor and all of our county councils have declared, we're in a housing crisis. We need to do everything we can to house our people, and we cannot physically, financially, we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources to build our way out of this in any timely fashion. So we want to use what's available in the short-term rentals. We want to take them out of circulation. So Bill 9 is the bill that's forward in Maui County Council right now. And I've been watching the testimony. I think there was like 3 or 4 days of hearings. Really compelling, amazing testimony. Shout out to Lahaina Strong. Shout out to all the county council members on Maui who sat there and asked the right questions. The first meeting was last week. Maui County had their first meeting where they actually could discuss after all of the testimony went through. Unfortunately, they went directly into executive session and didn't come out until 4 o'clock when they had to adjourn. That was the end of the meeting for the day. So there was no public discussion. Gary, what happens behind the scene in the executive session in the county council?
Executive sessions are supposed to be called only for legal matters that you can be sued over, basically. You're not supposed to vote in executive session. You're not supposed to poll each other, or you're not supposed to negotiate. The lawyers are there to say, okay, guys, what are your questions? And then the council members raise their hand and say, well, is it true they're going to sue us? Or if they sue us, what happens? Or, they talk legal questions back and forth. They're definitely not supposed to negotiate. That would be a violation of Sunshine Law. And I served on the Kauai County Council for 8 years. I've been in many executive sessions, and we always followed the law. Whenever anybody would raise their hand and say something, well, what if we do it this way? And start going into an amendment or something, somebody would be there, a lawyer. So, we can't really talk about that here. We got to talk about that outside on the floor.
Thankfully, we have Kiani Rollins Fernandez serving. She's a really good Sunshine Law police, as I've said,
yes,
on the public hearings. So I don't think that they're doing anything nefarious, but it seems like they're in there for a long time with the lawyers. So
right.
Hopefully they're asking all the important questions. So when they are deliberating, they can't hide behind the excuse of, well, we might get sued for this, or we might be
Right.
sued for that.
So they will always threaten to sue you. The bad guy, the chemical companies did it. They sued us and they won. And then we went to the state legislature and we won. And half of them are gone now. But they always, the big guys with money will always say, we'll get the lawyers, and they scare you with that because they got the money. They're going to hire these lawyers, and you're going to have to spend the money, and the law's not clear, and so you better be afraid. So you got to give in to them. Whether it's Cocoa Palms or whether it's chemical companies or whether it's short-term vacation rentals. But we can't be fear-based in our decision-making. And I want to applaud those council members and the public for sticking it out and for standing up for what's right. A lot of councils, they won't even get to this place. They'll say, no, we don't want to fight this battle. It's too divisive or whatever. And so they're not going to even stand up and fight. But the Maui County Council, because they're true believers, aloha aina for the people and the planet, I believe the majority of them are anyway, they're there fighting for what's right. Their people are I can't imagine the pain and the suffering they've gone through since the fire. And then one of the guys testifying, an owner said he had 400 rooms. And then he was asked, well, what are you going to do with those rooms if you can't vacation rent them? He said, I'm going to use them for family. In other words, he's saying, F you guys. I'm not going to let you use them. And it's disgusting. And this is a phased in. I think the council and the county, the mayor also is supporting this. It's my understanding they went to the state first and got the legislation passed, needed to do what they're doing.
Yes.
And then Governor Green also is aware and is supportive of what they're doing.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that they stick it out. But how many members in the Maui County Council? 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it takes 5.
It's 5.
Who 5 strong-willed people of strong ethical, moral character, willing to stand up for their community and not bow down to the fear.
There's already one county council member who's declared that they don't support it. South Maui's Tom Cook. So if you live in South Maui, I would highly recommend reaching out to Tom Cook if you think that this initiative is important. That we need.
What was the council member's name?
Tom Cook.
Tom Cook. Okay, has declared yes or no?
He's declared that he's not supporting the bill.
Okay. That's unfortunate. And every single one of the council members is up for election in 2026. Is that correct?
Yes.
And yeah, it's a critically important issue. It has brought the community of Maui, in my opinion, together in unity. And just like with the Bill 2491, it's going to have a component that can be considered divisive, but the good and the community building that comes out of it, it changed people's lives. As you know, you're here today and I'm here today because of that. And the same is going on in Maui. This has catalyzed many people into taking ownership of their government, and they're not going to stop at this bill. They're going to roll into the election. They're going to roll into water and other important issues. I've seen them grow myself. They'll grow in front of you. But we will know the decision next meeting is the 23rd. Is that correct?
The next meeting is the 23rd when they'll start deliberating. I don't know if there'll be any decision making at that time. It's really interesting because there's another bill put forward about Wailea 650, which is a development that they've been working on for years. So that had a meeting last Friday as well, and the deliberation was the testimony was really similar. We don't need this. We need affordable housing. I think the provision they removed, the developers asked, or initially had something like 700 homes, affordable homes, and then
Right.
whittled it down to 400, and now they're asking for only have to build 200 something. And there's no reason why the Maui County Council has to abide by it. They have to grant this to the developer, but they had a meeting that went on from 9 in the morning till 12:30 in the morning, all the way to kind of run this through to push it through. And they allowed it to pass with the provisions that the developer wanted, which was just to only have to build 280 affordable units, and the rest are going to be luxury homes.
You
And
know,
the democracy is insane.
I believe that each of us should be able to build wealth, personal wealth. I think there's a point where it becomes obscene, and you got to for sure give back. But I believe we should be able to own a home, own a nice home. But you know, I have a background in real estate. I tell you, I wear a lot of hats, right? I dealt in real estate development. I've been a real estate developer. I know the world of real estate development, and they just want to make money. And the more money they can make, the better. And so you get the county to lessen its requirements, they're going to make more money. That's all they want to do. They'll comply with the law at its minimum. On the county council, a quick story again, the Kukui'ula on the south side. There's 1,000 acres that used to be agricultural land, 1,000 acres. They came to the Kauai County Council into the state 20 years ago or so, before I was on the council, and said, we want to build houses here, houses for local people for generations to come. And so they got it rezoned, okay? Yep. The state and county believed them. Houses for local people. And then when I was on the council, they came to the council and says, you know, we can't really make money doing homes for local people. We really need to do a golf course and a hotel and shopping centers and luxury homes. And we need to rezone it. And I voted no. It was the only no vote. And today, there are no homes for local, but there's a tiny segment in the back that required affordable housing. But all the rest of it is, the vacant lots start at $2 or $3, $4 million. You know, the vacant lots, and it is despicable. It's gross. And that's what's happening on Maui. And so the council has to say no. If you want higher density, maybe you can negotiate. Maybe we can give you higher density so you can build twice as many affordable homes and therefore make money. But it's crazy. It's crazy. And we don't need those multi-million-dollar homes. We don't. I mean, you know, okay, you create housekeeping jobs, they create landscaping jobs and carpenter jobs. But yeah, it just gets me going. They should be charged an arm and a leg for property taxes and everything else too. And they're not bad people, you know, in terms of the people that own those houses. I don't mean to. Go ahead.
So what are we gonna do about it?
There we go. That's my job. You're doing my job.
What's next? I know that there's some rallies coming up. Good Trouble Day.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, what are we going to do about it? Each of us need to get more active. We need to make our calls. We need to let our council members and our senators and representatives know that we're there watching. We need to show up at the hearings. Even if we don't testify, we need to show up. And those actions coming up on July 17th, I believe, right? and that's meant to show solidarity among all of us opposing the Trump MAGA machine. All and we don't have time to go through all the horrible stuff that's going on. But show up there and share in the fellowship and in the community building, and meet new people and meet old people. Carry your
It's
signs.
important to show up to these rallies, but it's also important to do a little bit more. I think that Indivisible and 5051 have done incredible jobs of rallying people together and coalescing behind this atrocious federal regime that's happening. But we have really awful things happening here in Hawaii that we need help and support on. So I encourage everyone that's going to these rallies and on July 17th to cause some real good trouble and contact your lawmakers, contact your representatives in the county council, and let them know that you are not happy with the way that things are going. Even if you're not happy with the fact that they're not doing enough to combat the federal cuts that are coming our way. Because I don't think many or any of the county councils or our state lawmakers really are speaking up enough and taking action, calling for a special session, introducing bills that are saying that we don't want to have private police, secret police cooperating with ICE, things like that. Our state government can do that, but we need to make sure that they know what we want.
And our county government can do it too. The county police are county employees, not state employees. And so they can definitely pass resolutions. Their voices are stronger. We have strong voices. We're here on the video podcast, but the county council, a resolution or a state resolution sends a message even stronger. I'm boycotting. I'm calling for a boycott of Amazon, and I'm 2 weeks into it. And I was so disgusted reading every day about his wedding in Venice and just the obnoxious, obscene display of wealth. Yeah. How many people can it feed, right? Instead of like, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's just disgusting. And he's a strong proponent of the Trump MAGA machine. Thiel, Peter Thiel, I think his name is a founder of PayPal. He no longer owns PayPal, but he's a mega tech guy too. The theme of these tech mega billion dollars, they don't want no government telling them what to do. They don't want government controlling AI or controlling how much data they can harvest. This fella Thiel actually did he wrote a op-ed piece and said he felt that democracy was threatening his freedom. I mean, he actually put that in writing. Democracy is threatening his freedom. And he's the number one supporter of Vance, Vice President Vance, a patron of Vance's. I'm not making this stuff up. This is, yeah. So I decided, I asked Claudette about South Africa. Claudette's from South Africa. And I'm reading Nelson Mandela's book right now. How did they apartheid was like huge, white control of an African country. How did they overthrow? How did they get rid of it? At the end of the day, it was economic. It was sanctions, global sanctions, and individual economic strikes and that kind of thing. And so I decided I want to boycott Amazon. And you can buy this stuff. I can buy my shirts directly from the shirt guy or whatever, and it's a thing I can do from home. It's not, you look at the Montgomery or Selma bus strikes, right? Those folks actually had to walk to work. They had to pay a real price. So I'm promoting, and there's not just me, but there's a national effort to boycott certain products, and we can talk more about that later. But Friday, Thursday, July 17th, noon to 1:30, Hawaii State Public Library. So this is on Oahu. Noon to 1:30 at the Hawaii State Public Library. In Hilo, it's 3 to 5 p.m. Hilo Bayfront. Kailua Kona, it's 4 to 5 p.m. behind the Mormon temple. And Na'alehu, it's 4 to 5 p.m. near the post office. In Waimea, it's 4 to 5 p.m. Parker Ranch Center. And on Maui, 4:30 to 6 p.m. Queen Ka'ahumanu Center. I know that was a mouthful, but that's what I got.
Thank you for sharing those.
Oh, I didn't mention Kauai, did I? So Kauai, 4:30 to 6 o'clock outside Kukui Grove Mall on the highway there by Macy's. 4:30 to 6 o'clock. Make some good trouble. So I'll be there. Oh boy, I'm worn out. You know, we have to stop and smell the roses too. I know it's hard sometimes. You know, we're doom scrolling. I had the worst 4th of July ever. I was like total black mood. And I don't want to admit this to anybody, so don't pass it on. That I let the passing of the big, beautiful, ugly Bill affect my mood, but it was the worst ever.
You know, I mean, celebrating 4th of July just seems so silly in these times. You know, it's really, really hard to even be around people who are they mean well. You know, they really want to just live in the American dream, and it's the reality is that's not happening right now, and we really are ashamed of what's going on in our government, what's going on in our state, what America looks like to the rest of the world. Yeah, so it's it's pretty dismal, but you know, I saw a post on Facebook on 4th of July, and I thought it was really interesting. Essentially, there's this conservative guy who was talking about all the things that America had accomplished, and declared independence from an empire, and freed the slaves, and, you know, modern age, innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And it listed all these things, and then it said, this is why we're proud to be Americans, not for what we claim, but for what we remember, not for what we dream, but for what we've done. And I feel so opposite of that statement. I am proud to be an American for what we claim we can be, for what we dream we are, you know, for the pursuit of happiness, for freedom, for equality, liberty, and justice for all. And I don't see that being done. And you know, the only thing I can do is hope and dream that someday America will, you know, be that dream that I wish it will be, that I grew up reciting every single day that we are supposed to be.
We have to, you know. We have to believe. There's a famous. Let me see if I can think of it. So famous, I can't remember. The song in Hawaii, on the North Shore, maybe Blue Hawaii or something, where it says you have to have a dream, because if you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true? So yeah, so no, and we have such potential, and we can and we must.
I want to caveat that by saying that I also saw a lot of discussions around, you know, how the federal government is such a mess, and I think it might be time that we secede from the union. And I just want to remind people that we are in Hawaii, and there is a sovereignty movement here, that there are a lot of Kanaka that have been working for a very long time to get independence from the United States. And maybe instead of looking toward other states to succeed with, I think we can look within and support those movements if we feel so called to do so.
I'm really glad you brought that up, and we should dedicate a show to this. I have a friend who writes on this a little bit, Richard Bodine. He may even be watching, but it talks about achieving sovereignty in a holistic sense, even without seceding from the Union, but still making our own rules, taking over our own government, running our agriculture and our housing and our economy the way we want to run it, but we have to be involved. And then if seceding from the Union, I have a hard time grabbing a hold of that in my head. But I don't have a hard time saying we're going to grow our own food. We're going to produce our own electricity. We're not going to rely on Young Brothers. We're not going to rely on the military. We're not going to rely on tourism. We still live in the most beautiful place on the planet, so people are going to want to come here anyway, but on our terms, on terms grounded in the Native Hawaiian culture and values, and with all of us participating. The overthrow was illegal. There's no question about that. Where we go from here, I'm not the guy to lead that, and but we certainly can do a lot in the spirit of independence, with tangible differences, tangible results. So let's talk about circling back around on that. I'm really glad you brought that up. And for me, people ask, what can I do? What can I do? I say start at home. I'm not everybody can plant a garden. Okay, people live in apartments and stuff like that, but we've got a garden. We eat food. I shop locally at markets. Buy at thrift stores. We throw away so much junk. Anyway, I want to see if there's anything. I haven't been watching the comments. Has Mishka been kind of watching them, or is there anything? I don't want people to think we're not responding. We only have another minute or two. You're frozen again.
Lots of good comments. There was some unfortunate news I saw from Pam Elder. She shared that Hawaii County Council recently voted to approve an MOA affirming ICE and the cooperation of ICE and the Hawaii Police Department. She called her council member and they ended up voting no, but the council unfortunately approved it. I wasn't aware of that. That's really unfortunate. What is there anything that can be done now that that's passed? Can they take it back?
I think you could. I mean, if a contract can be voided, or you can write a new agreement. I think that the council has a legal authority, I believe, to override it possibly. People got to mobilize. I'm not familiar with that particular issue. I do know there's a lot of good people in Hawaii County working on this, and there's a lot of fear from ICE with the coffee farmers and other farmers in the area.
Amber Young said we need higher wages and diversify our economy. Government needs to invest in infrastructure so the cost to develop homes is more affordable.
Yeah. Sewers. Invest in sewage treatment. We can build our ADUs in our house. So good comments. And 2026 is coming. So these council members and senators, reps who are not aligned with the values that I'll say collectively we represent, or you as individual, we need to get involved in campaigns, either run against them or help them or oppose them. Only 30% of people showed up in the primary, and only half the people are registered. So that means only like a quarter of the people are who can vote are actually voting.
But half of the representatives that were running didn't have a challenger, so there's no one to vote for.
Well, line up, and I'll put it out there. If anyone is interested in finding out more about this, they can contact me directly. My contact information is on GaryHooser.com or GaryHooser.blog. Send me a note on Facebook. And if you're interested and you share my values, I'd be happy to talk story with you and introduce you to other people involved in the same struggle. And you got to have an 808 phone number, guys. I'll tell you that. Okay. I'll tell you, that's my pet peeve. A lot of good people they don't have 808, but if you want to get elected, you want to run for office, you got to have 808. I've met Kanaka, born and raised here, went away to school and got a California phone number. And I tell them, you got to get an 808. The first question people have if you don't have an 808 is, how long are you going to be here? So that's my closing pet peeve from the Who's.
Thank you, Gary. I just wanted to note that we're going to have a break for the next 2 Mondays, and we'll be back on July 28th.
Okay, right on. Are you Juliet, Mishka, and everyone who's watched? Aloha and hui ho. That was a good hour and a half.
Have a good night.